It's the post here. Indiana fans may not like it. She's named after CC. Now, Caitlin Clark, we all know, went to Iowa, and Iowa been killing it right now in women's basketball, but she's starting to show love, man. Indiana is really starting to grow on her. She said, hope he scores 3 touchdowns Monday night. Big Indiana fan Monday night. So Caitlin Clark let the world know she's going to be a big Indiana fan.
Pay close attention to what just happened, because on the surface it looks harmless. But beneath it sits something far more revealing. Caitlin Clark publicly praised Indiana University football, calling out a specific player and confidently predicting a 3-touchdown performance. To a casual observer, this might register as nothing more than a star athlete enjoying college football like everyone else. But context matters, and when you understand Clark's history, this moment becomes far more significant. This is the same athlete who spent 4 years building an unbreakable bond with Iowa. Her identity, brand, and public perception were deeply intertwined with that program. Iowa fans didn't just support her, they believed they were part of her story, almost co-owners of her legacy. For years, Clark represented more than a player. She was Iowa basketball. And now, here she is openly aligning herself with Indiana athletics, not just professionally through the fever, but culturally and emotionally through public support of Indiana football. That shift is subtle, but it's powerful. Clark is no longer positioning herself as a college icon frozen in time. She's signaling that her future identity lives elsewhere now. This is how elite athletes evolve their brands. They don't cling to nostalgia. They expand their footprint. By publicly engaging with Indiana University sports, she's embedding herself deeper into the Indiana sports ecosystem, not just as a WNBA player, but as a statewide figure. And that's where tension quietly forms. Some Iowa fans are uncomfortable with this transition because it challenges the emotional ownership they felt over Clark's career. But Clark doesn't owe permanence to any fan base. Athletes grow, markets change, and identities evolve. What looks like casual fandom is actually a deliberate re-anchoring of relevance. She's planting roots where her professional future resides. This move also reflects maturity. Clark understands that relevance in modern sports is about presence, not just performance. With the WNBA season stalled and uncertainty looming, staying visible matters. Aligning herself with Indiana athletics broadens her audience and strengthens her connection to the community that now represents her professional home. Nothing about this moment was accidental. Whether consciously planned or instinctively executed, it reflects a star who understands how influence works. Clark is transitioning from a college legend to a regional sports icon, and moments like this are how that transformation happens in real time.
Speak about the Bears, which is crazy, because I'm actually in Chicago right now, and it was crazy out here last night, and it was freezing. Now, the Bears played last night, and they had magnificent game, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. She stated the Bears are insane, and that was because.
Watch closely, because what looks like harmless social media activity is actually revealing a much bigger shift in Caitlin Clark's career and mindset. When Clark publicly praised Indiana University football, named a specific player, and confidently predicted a 3-touchdown performance, it wasn't just casual fandom. This is the same athlete who spent 4 years building an almost sacred bond with Iowa, a fan base that believed her legacy would forever be tied to them. But that era is over. Clark is no longer positioning herself as a college icon frozen in time. She's actively redefining herself as an Indiana sports figure, embedding her identity into the region where her professional future lies. That transition is subtle, but it matters, and it's creating quiet tension with fans who assumed emotional ownership over her career. These moments are part of a broader pattern. Clark has become noticeably more active online, commenting on college football rivalries, reacting to NFL games like Caleb Williams' late heroics, and engaging with Indiana athletes outside of basketball. For months, critics accused her of being too quiet, of letting her brand drift during the WNBA's long absence. Now she's visible again, but not cautiously. She's picking sides, showing personality, and inserting herself into the wider sports conversation. That's not random. Clark hasn't played a meaningful basketball game in roughly 7 months due to the ongoing uncertainty around CBA negotiations. In that vacuum, relevance doesn't maintain itself. She's staying present without stepping on the court, protecting both her body and her cultural footprint. Things get more interesting when you look at her interactions within the Fever organization. Clark joking about Brienne January running players through hours of defensive slide drills might sound lighthearted, but it hints at a real internal tension. Under Stephanie White, Indiana transformed into a defense-first team, a dramatic philosophical shift. January's 7-time all-defensive selection was brought in specifically to enforce that identity. The challenge is obvious. Clark is one of the most elite offensive players in basketball, but defense has never been the defining strength of her game. Like most defensive superstars, she's historically conserved energy on that end. When a system suddenly demands relentless defensive effort, constant movement, and physical engagement, the adjustment isn't just mental, it's physical. That context matters when you consider Clark's injury-plagued season. Limited to just 13 games due to recurring soft tissue injuries, questions naturally rise. These types of injuries often surface when players are asked to move differently, stress new muscle groups, and adapt to unfamiliar demands too quickly. While it would be simplistic to blame the defensive focus outright, the connection between a dramatic system change and a body breaking down is worth examining. The effects showed up statistically as well. Clark led the league in turnovers for long stretches of the season. Turnovers aren't just about skill. They're often a sign of mental overload. Running the offense, creating shots, managing pace, and now being asked to fully commit defensively stretches any player's bandwidth. When everything is emphasized equally, something suffers. In Clark's case, it was decision-making. The hidden lesson here is balance. Indiana must protect what makes Caitlin Clark special, because asking a generational offensive talent to do everything can quietly erode the very edge that defines her.
Focus for the Fever coach. So basically, it looked like Caitlin Clark could be calling out Stephanie White. Man, Caitlin Clark has joked about one of her Indiana Fever coach's emphasis on defense, bruh. It's that it's hard to poke holes in Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark game. Despite being just 23 years old, she is one of the most talented offensive weapons in all of basketball, men's or women. I repeat, that
Clark's 2025 season was limited to just 13 games due to repeated soft tissue injuries, and that fact reframes everything. Soft tissue injuries often stem from either inadequate conditioning or sudden changes in physical demands. When an athlete is asked to move differently, engage differently, and exert energy in unfamiliar ways, the body can struggle to adapt. Now consider the Fever's defensive overhaul. A defense-first system demands constant lateral movement, rapid rotations, physical contact, and sustained engagement. For an offensive-minded player adjusting to those demands, the stress placed on the body increases significantly. This doesn't mean defense caused Clark's injuries, but it does suggest a correlation worth examining. When a player's responsibilities expand dramatically in a short time frame, especially after years of prioritizing offense, the risk of physical breakdown rises. Clark's injuries weren't catastrophic impacts. They were the kind that accumulate, strains, pulls, nagging issues that aligns with overuse or adaptation stress. It's a reminder that system changes don't just affect performance, they affect health. Finally, we arrive at the statistical warning signs. Clark led the league in turnovers for significant stretches of the season. Analysts pointed it out repeatedly, not as criticism, but as a symptom. Turnovers spike when players are overloaded mentally. Clark was asked to run the offense, create shots, manage pace, facilitate teammates, and now anchor defensive effort. That's a massive cognitive load. When mental bandwidth stretches too far, decision-making suffers. Passes get rushed. Reads slow down. Turnovers climb. For most superstars, defense is what gets sacrificed. But if a coach demands defensive discipline from everyone, something else gives. In Clark's case, it showed up in offensive execution. That's the hidden cost of forcing a generational offensive talent into a full two-way role too quickly. The joke about endless defensive slides may have been playful, but it also hinted at frustration. And frustration, when paired with physical fatigue, shows up on the stat sheet. This isn't an indictment. It's an insight. The Fever must balance maximizing Clark's offensive brilliance while protecting her body and mental clarity. Because when you ask your best weapon to do everything, you risk dulling the very edge that makes her special.
her logo three, and pretty much the way she uses her mid-range game and the way she could toss the basketball around coming off assists. Now, however, this is not to say that Caitlin Clark is the perfect basketball player. She sometimes forces things that aren't there. Now, if you guys don't remember, Caitlin Clark was leading the WNBA in turnovers for quite some period of time. I believe Skip Bayless actually talked.
Then there's the Caleb Williams moment. Caitlin Clark reacting to an NFL fourth-quarter throw, calling the Bears insane, engaging directly with professional football discourse. Again, on the surface, it's just a fan reacting to a big play. But taken together with her other recent activity, a clear pattern emerges. For months, critics complained that Clark was too quiet online. They argued her brand was stagnating, that she wasn't capitalizing on her momentum during the WNBA's long absence. That criticism has vanished, not because Clark became louder, but because she became intentional. She's active again, but not cautiously so. She's not posting generic motivational quotes or recycled highlights. She's engaging in real-time sports conversations, choosing sides, showing personality, and inserting herself into broader athletic culture. This matters because Clark hasn't played a meaningful basketball game in roughly 7 months. That's an eternity in modern sports media cycles. In that vacuum, athletes either fade or evolve. Clark chose evolution. By engaging with college football rivalries, NFL moments, and Indiana athletes outside her own sport, she's maintaining cultural relevance without stepping onto a court. And that's not accidental. With CBA negotiations dragging on and no clear resolution in sight, Clark is managing visibility without risking injury or fatigue. She's staying top of mind with fans, sponsors, and media while remaining physically inactive. That's strategic brand preservation at the highest level. She's also subtly expanding her audience. Football fans who may not follow the WNBA now see her reactions. Indiana sports fans see her as one of their own. These moments humanize her while reinforcing her star power. The key point is this: Clark isn't just waiting for basketball to return. She's actively shaping the narrative during the downtime. Every interaction keeps her relevant, relatable, and visible in a sports world that never stops moving.
There are critics that have called out Caitlin Clark defense. We all could agree on that. The article goes on to say, in fact, Clark has gotten some criticism from fans about being a loaf on defense in the past, which has led to her falling asleep at the end and allowing easy buckets. Most superstar players, besides like Kobe and Michael Jordan, typically don't play defense, man. Sometimes LeBron, you will see him running down the court beating balls off the hoop, but he loafs too, bro. It's just part.
Now we reach the moment that exposes something deeper. Clark posted about Brianne January putting younger players through defensive slide drills for hours. It was framed as humor, a lighthearted nod to tough coaching. But context transforms jokes into signals. Under Stephanie White, the Indiana Fever became a defense-first team. That was a dramatic philosophical shift from the previous season. Brianne January, a 7-time all-defensive selection, wasn't brought in casually. She was hired to reshape the team's defensive culture from the ground up. This is where Caitlin Clark's role becomes complicated. She is one of the most gifted offensive players in basketball, period. Her scoring gravity, shooting range, and playmaking separate her from nearly everyone. But defense has never been the centerpiece of her game, and that's not unusual. Offensive superstars often conserve energy defensively. It's a trade-off seen across all levels of basketball. However, when your team's identity becomes defense, that trade-off becomes harder to manage. When your assistant coach is a defensive legend drilling fundamentals relentlessly, expectations shift. Suddenly, effort on every rotation matters. Physical engagement is demanded, and that creates friction for a player whose value is overwhelmingly offensive. The joke about endless defensive slides hints at that tension. It suggests fatigue, not just physical but mental. Buying into a system that doesn't naturally align with your strengths requires adjustment, and adjustment isn't always smooth. This doesn't mean Clark resists defense. It means she's navigating a system that asks more of her in areas that weren't previously central to her game. That dynamic deserves attention because it affects everything from workload to performance balance.